Hey, everybody. It is yet another moment that you are with us here in the barbershop for barbershop conversations. I'm telling you, tonight we have a phenomenal show on tap. I know some of you are probably going to be saying, oh my God, here we go. I've been listening to some stuff all week. The world of media, social media has been, beating you in the head with, some of the issues that have been plagued from the Oscars. And so tonight, though, we want to talk about what happened, but really we want to talk about what didn't happen, right? And so we're going to discuss some things tonight that deal with. And I'm not here to talk about Chris. I'm not here to talk about Will tonight, but I am here to talk about our people and how we are perceived, how we operate in our own uniqueness, and also how society views us when it comes to these type of issues and topics that pop up, where we are looked at differently than we should be. I'll say it that way to be semi political. But we're gonna pull the covers back tonight. So it ain't about being politically correct. It's going to be absolutely about doing the work that needs to be done to make us the best that we can be by exposing what needs to be exposed. So I'm going to open the floor real quick because I want the folks who are on with me today, beautiful two young folks that are here, to just give an introduction of who they are, before we get into the meat of the conversation and the topic tonight. So I'm gonna start with my sister, who's like a niece to me, but share with them, who are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlene Phelps. As Mr. Nat said, I'm like his niece. He's like my mentor, my uncle. And I've been invited on the broadcast just to share my perspective as a woman, as a Black woman,
Mhm.
as a Christian woman. And I'm excited to hear the perspective of the Black man in this whole situation. That's
Amen.
important to me. My perspective of being a Black woman, dealing with Black men, it might surprise you on this one. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Ned.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Always welcome here, my brother, the
All right.
Josh.
Yeah, peace and blessings, everyone. My name is Joshua Smith. In the community, I'm known as Brother Joshua from Baltimore, Maryland. Um, I'm a wholeness specialist,
Mm.
and so at an elementary school, so I teach social emotional learning, which is kind of a merger of mindfulness and mental health, and also a holistic health coach. So this is a very interesting topic of discussion, that surrounds this event that's happened at the Oscars. So yeah, I'm
Yes,
happy to
yes.
be here.
I appreciate you as well, bro. And your level of expertise from both of you, uh, is greatly important to this conversation, right? Because all of us are impacted in some way or another, you know, despite where you think or your thoughts may be. And I think I shared this with Charlene the other day. This is a moment when everybody's opinion has weight and has merit, right? No
Right.
matter where you sit at the table on this particular issue, your input is important to, the development of our growth, right? Because whether you are a person who says, hey, you know I don't agree with what happened, or the guy who says, hey, no, I'm right there with him, I would have done the same thing. Either way it goes, you are valuable and your opinion is valuable in this, because that's how we develop and learn and grow, by listening. And as old folks say, iron sharpens iron. Listen, it don't happen if both pieces of steel never meet. So
Mm,
let's
facts.
let's get the iron together today and talk. So I say that to you guys to say, listen, do not feel that you have to hold back. As we love to say here on our podcast and on our show, pull the covers back. We're gonna pull
Mm,
the covers off. We're going to be transparent, and we're gonna keep it 100, right? So that nobody can ever say, "Hey, I didn't quite get what you meant." We're gonna bring clarity to the table today, if that's all right with you too.
That's fine with me.
Fantastic.
I say.
I- I'm going to say real briefly, because I just did it a moment ago. If you like to quickly share, because we are live right now on Facebook and other social media streams, but if you wanted to take a moment to share on your own pages so that it's up, feel free to do so. That is absolutely, it's encouraged. The more folks we connect to, uh, the hopefully the more folks we can open eyes to. Cool. So, but how was? Let me do a check in real quick. Let me just do a because since I got my brother on here and he is a holistic teacher and educator, I just want to do a mental check in and see where everybody's at today. I know you just said you rushed in from school. How's your day going, brother Josh?
It's going well. You know, I do a bunch of which is really interesting. I do restorative practice, and so one of the things I do is conflict resolution circles between students who have had conflicts, sometimes even parents who've been involved in the conflicts, and
necessary.
Yeah, and so people getting smacked and having to deal with it, something I deal with on a daily basis. I just watched a boy get smacked yesterday. You know,
so this is not new territory for you.
Nah. Yeah, but I'm doing well. Just kind of calming down and centering myself so I can be in this space. You know.
Awesome. And my sister, my niecey, what's up, girl? How you doing today? How was your day?
My day was good. It's been quiet. Went to a funeral, a family friend. You know, just there to support the family. Thank you. It's been good though. Today has been a quiet day, and I'm not tired, which I usually am. So it's a good day.
I hear you. I was in the funeral all day yesterday, and so I do understand. It's been funerals one after another. So I listen. I respectfully understand the stressors that come from that, but also the relief that comes from that.
Yeah.
As we learn and hopefully grieve in a healthy way. So let's get into this, y'all. I mean, we did the formalities. Everybody's good. Let's get radical. let's take the covers off of this one. So this conversation, obviously, as we stated, stems from the event that took place at the Oscars, right? Everybody's talking about it. You know, Will walks up on the stage, smacks my man across the face, goes, sits down and says, "Keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth." Right. For some of us, right, that behavior, that moment is not uncommon territory. We've seen it. If you live in any city or been around most of the folks in my family, that ain't nothing new. I've had family members smack family members because you just said something out of pocket. So that behavior isn't uncommon for our culture, but to have it displayed on that stage and that kind of atmosphere created a ripple in the pond for society to think like, oh my God, how dare they do that? And so there's some folks who are like, he wrong. That's absolutely unfounded. He shouldn't do that. Da, 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 da. I think I mentioned a moment ago, there was a tweet from like one other artist or entertainer who commented about, hey, I would have sued him for $200 million if he did that to me, or somebody else, another commentator in the sports realm said, oh, he'd have had to see me. He'd have smacked me. He'd have to fight me every time I see him.
On site.
On site.
On site.
On site. When I see you, it's on. Just know, be ready.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be a problem in some furniture moving.
Yeah. It's going to be some furniture shifting. And if we outside, we're going to tear up some lawn furniture. Something going. So with all of that on the table, you know what I mean? Where are we at? I mean, so I'll start by saying, you know, my perspective on that moment went way beyond the Will Smith smacking Chris moment, right? Chris Rock moment. I looked at it from a cultural perspective of, you know, this is how we've been indoctrinated to perform, right? Society expects us to, you know, not show our aggression because, you know, when a black man shows any level of aggression or any level of assertiveness, it's a threat. It's us, you know, stepping out of our bounds or doing something that isn't normal for us. We're supposed to just be the, you know, seen but not heard kind of individuals, in my opinion. And so when a brother steps up and says, you know, I'm not going to let you disrespect my queen. And if from my understanding of what I've read thus far, you know, if it's something that's been repetitive, at some point you got to say to him, dude, you got to come talk to me. Like, we got to have a man-to-man moment. It's a straight talk, chin check time, because you can't keep disrespecting me and my family. I'm reminded of the moment. Completely reminded me of in my marriage when I was married. There was a moment where my wife and I were headed out to dinner, and we were walking to the restaurant, and these two young Caucasian young men who might have been college kids were a little intoxicated, and one of the kids bumped into my wife as he walked by, and then just kept going, and didn't say no apologies, no I'm sorry, excuse me. And I looked at her, she looked at me with this look of, okay, and you're going to do what now? Right. And so it was incumbent of me to step up and I was like, oh, hey, stop. You got to come talk to me. You need to apologize to my wife. You bumped into her, and he first looked at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, dude, you bumped into my wife. We're not walking away from this parking lot moment until you apologize. And in my head, and I'll be honest with you, it was two of them and it was just one of me, but I was in my head like, it looks like I might have to fight tonight. Because I was like, there's no way I was going to dinner because, and I'm just going to be, this is no disrespect to any of my sisters. I know that it wasn't going to be a pleasant night if I had not done something to defend my wife. Right. She was going to look at me like I was less than. It wasn't going to be no meals. We might not even went to the restaurant. She might have been like, all right, I just want to go home. And so for African-American men in particular, I can only speak to them because I'm one of them. That's been the culture that we've been brought up in. That's how I was raised. And I'm pretty sure most of the men I know were raised that way, whether or not we all operate that way, but that's the narrative that we all came under. So that was for me. I didn't see it as this is horrible. I saw it as this is a learning moment. We got a teaching opportunity here, but I didn't see it as a bad thing. I don't know. What about you, Charlene? I know you had a different perspective.
Oh man, I was one that I don't watch the Oscars. I just saw it when it hit social media. And for me, I was embarrassed for everybody involved. Will, Jada, Chris, I was embarrassed. My perspective as a Black woman, let me just tell you a little story.
All right.
I did not grow up as a young girl and as a young woman with my father protecting me. Right. I experienced a lot of horrible things, and my dad either wasn't around or just didn't protect me. Right. So I didn't see that I saw what I saw in the world, and it's what you described, right? Men protecting their families, but I didn't experience that.
That wasn't your experience.
It wasn't my experience. No. So I grew up as one of those, watching my mom be that strong Black woman, right? Okay. Raising her children. She grew up with her father, but we didn't. So when I was a young woman in my teens, early 20s, there was another man hit me, right? I was there protecting my cousin who was a woman, and her boyfriend hit me. And the first person I called was my dad. Daddy, this man just hit me. And because of what was going on in my personal life, he said, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm not protecting you. So, there you go. Wow. But I grew into this woman where I don't want anyone to make me look a certain way, right? Growing up in the hood, that's how it is. You're not going to make me look stupid, right? So then when I got with my ex-boyfriend who had anger issues and rage issues, when he would just explode, he played football, right? So he was aggressive. He was a bouncer. He was, when he would act out, I would feel. I'm very reserved, Mr. Ned, as you know.
Yes, I know.
I'm very soft-spoken. So for me, to see that in a man who reminded me of my father, it's like, okay, I can't deal with that. I can't deal with that, right? And for a woman growing up around aggressive men such as my dad, right? That taught me that I can't be vulnerable as a Black woman. I cannot be vulnerable, and you not protecting me. So I have to be a certain way.
Wow.
Right? So I was embarrassed because I'm a reserved woman, right? I would not want my man, yes, protect me if I'm in danger. I wouldn't want my man acting like that because you represent me.
Mm.
Right? I'm this soft, delicate, I got my sides to me, Mr. Ned. I'm a
Really?
fighter, I'm a scrapper, but I have, as a woman, I'm not that. I'm the image of Jada when she was sitting there, you know, just
Mm.
not saying anything. Oh, I'm gonna cut you out behind closed doors, right? For making me look crazy. But
Mm-hmm.
for me it was different because I didn't have protection. And when I thought it was there, it wasn't. And then my next encounter with the strong man was this fool acting a fool,
Right.
embarrassing me. So yeah, I was just embarrassed for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Duly noted. Duly noted. I see you getting ready, brother Josh.
Poor
I see
brother
you
Josh.
prepping, bro. Give it to me. What you got?
Gotta cleanse, I mean, one of the things that struck me was like I live in Baltimore City in the hood, right?
Mhm.
Originally, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I grew up around in the crack era, gangster disciples and vice lords. And Baltimore is one of the most violent cities in America. So I've seen people hit with metal rods in the middle of the street, struck with bricks. My little brothers, I've had little brothers been murdered. And so when I see somebody get smacked like that it was surreal because it's like, here are two black men at the top of their fields, under total white gaze. And that's a whole nother part of the situation.
That's
right?
a whole other, right.
Yeah, it's a whole nother part about the white gaze. But here's two brothers at the top of their field and he's smacking this other guy. Now that's normal in the hood. Like, you talked about somebody's wife, you're gonna get smacked, right? But I think what that did was it brought up, though, is that the way we need to be handling this?
Right.
Is that the way we need to be handling these things? Because the sad thing about it is that there's young people that's gonna see that. And they're gonna say, yeah, that's the way I should conduct myself. Now, recognizing Will Smith is an extremely wealthy man. And people have said, like, oh, that's the Philly in him. I'm like, man, he ain't been in Philly in a long time.
Right. Like,
that's Chris Rock.
now.
Like these dudes are so removed from the hood.
Absolutely.
So removed.
Both of them.
I'm like, they're way more Hollywood and way more Western white society than they are, what's going down here. So it was, but I felt like it did bring up, as the sister said, it brought up some very important conversations. And one of them that just struck me was how we interact with how do we protect our women?
Yeah.
How should our women be protected? Because during slavery, they weren't protected.
Absolutely.
And I feel that there is some resentment, some trauma, something that's locked in the DNA. That sat with our women because we did not die for them at the level in which some say we should have or could have. I'm not trying to judge our ancestors because I ain't been a slave and I don't want to go through it. But but a man is a warrior. I should say one of his positions, the way I look at it.
Yes, sir.
A protector. Not saying our sisters aren't, because we definitely got some warrior sisters. And if you ever mess with one of a mother's child, you will find out how much of a warrior she is.
You'll find out how much of a warrior she is.
You're gonna find out because she's gonna fight more intensely than a man ever will fight, right?
Listen, that's it.
Because she's the final line of defense. But we are that first line of defense, like you were with your wife. But how we engage that, I think is so key and so important, because I feel, this is from me talking to my sisters, so many of them feel insecure because we haven't been there in that protector role. So in that moment, Will, right? He's standing up for his wife and everybody's talking about the situation. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think this has a whole lot to do with Jada. I don't think it has a whole lot to do with Chris's joke. And as people have been joking on social media, I don't think it got a whole lot to do with August either.
Right. At all.
I think this happened. I'm gonna shut up. I think that this have to do with Will Smith at 9 years old.
That's it.
And his father beating down his mom and growing up And that childhood trauma of not being able to protect her when he punched her so hard in the mouth that blood came out. And we got to pull the cover off.
That's
we
right.
got to pull the cover off the Black community about this abuse that's going on, this domestic violence happening both ways in the Black community.
Yes, sir.
Straight up violence in the home.
Yep.
And him seeing that and not being able and holding that and saying in his book, he felt like a coward his whole life.
And there was a moment where he could be the man that he thought he should be for his mom.
How many brothers do we have walking around that are holding on to that childhood trauma of not being able to be something that they should never, he can't be that at 9 years old.
No,
you can't take
and he
on
should have never had to try to be or think to be.
But in his consciousness, he believes, I could have done something. I should have done something. What, stand and get beat up?
And get beat up too?
Well, at least I would have been, we hold in this guilt and this grief and this pain. And because we as men don't emote, right? Because our masculine, a lot of time our masculine energy, but we're also socialized not to emote. He's holding into that. He's repressed it and repressed it and repressed it. And so the moment came up and he let it out. And
it manifested itself in that moment into a slap. Yeah.
And maybe,
I agree. Listen.
And maybe the world needed to see that. And maybe America needs to have this conversation. And maybe it wasn't nice and pretty the way it came out, but it was a conversation I think that needs to be had. And so I'm happy that it happened just so we can have this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was, for me, that same mindset. This was a dialogue that needed to happen. And it doesn't really hit the table the way we want it until we have an ugly moment, right? Real talk don't happen until the war's over. Or once the war happens, now it's like, wait a minute, we got to get to the table. So to have that moment be a public moment, a global moment, now gives us an opportunity to talk about the childhood trauma that has plagued so many of us men, right? So many of us grew up, like you said, watching our mothers get beat, seeing our sisters get beat, seeing your neighbor, like we've seen it, and then not be able to do anything because you're a child. What can you honestly do against a grown man who is displaying that level of aggression against a woman? And you pick two paths growing up. You either say, like obviously Will did, you become this suppressive male who takes those feelings and you just push them down and hope that one day they just relief like a bowel movement. Or you become the other guy who displays that same level of aggression or behavior to every woman you come in contact with because you figure, hey, that's what I saw, so this is how I'm going to be. And so it's one or the other. You end up in one of those two veins of living because that's what you've been exposed to. That's what you've been, driven into. And so, yeah, the trauma that comes out of that moment. And real talk, when you thought, I'm like you. I didn't watch the Oscars. I don't do all that stuff. I think that's just crazy to me. But of course, it was all over social media. I was more impacted, honestly, by his acceptance speech than I was by the smack, right? Because in the acceptance speech, I saw the little boy. Wow. I saw the little boy standing in front of these folks wanting to figure out, how can y'all help me? Like that was his cry for help, in my opinion, because he was just like, I did something and I don't even know why I did it or how to get out of it. And that's the internal stuff, the suppressive behavior and mentality that I felt he was struggling with. And then he came off with another apology. I need to apologize because that's that childhood. And like you, I've been an educator, so I've worked with children almost half of my lifetime. And when a kid does something that they know, like, oh, I messed up, they become this guilt-driven, like even if they don't come out and physically say to you, I'm sorry, you'll see their behavior change to start doing things to try to gain your approval again because they know they messed up. And that's the kid I saw when he got up on the mic to accept his speech. I was like, that dude right there is dealing with some childhood trauma. There's some years of just suppression that started coming out in his tears and his stumbling of his words. Like you just saw it. And I was like, yo, he hurting. And it had nothing to do with Jada. It had nothing to do with it was all about that little boy in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I was like, man, this is not good, you know, but it is timely because we need to be able to have these kind of conversations where I pray that folks are doing more of the sharing their thoughts and their feelings and less of the drop in my opinion because I think it's funny. Because it's easy to talk about somebody's pain and make a joke of it.
Right.
But it takes courage to really sit down and talk about, man, I'm here. I'm where he's at. And I know I needed that same. I wish somebody had spoken into my life when I was the 8-9-year-old kid trying to figure out how do I stop my dad from abusing my mom. Right. But there was no one there for that. I'm
Right.
sorry, go ahead, Charlene.
No, I agree with you. And that's the plight of the Black man, right? The childhood trauma. And watching your broadcast about, being under construction, a lot of men they're not gonna, I don't know what my dad went through that made him hit my mom and beat my twin up and put her in the hospital as an adult woman, right? I don't know what his trauma, I know some of his struggles, but I don't know what the childhood trauma was that caused that behavior. Right. So until men are willing, they're able, but until they're willing to sit down and do the work, right? Us women, me as my father's daughter, I don't trust him. I don't trust him acting like that. And he could be a different man right now, but I don't trust him. I don't trust that that I can be in the same space with him and he not blow up, right? So then I cannot be vulnerable with my father. He created me, right? If I look at God the way I look at my dad, I would be all messed up.
Wow.
That's
a powerful point. Yeah, I want to chime on something because we got some wonderful folks who are listening in and watching us, and thank you all for being a part of the show today. Calvin Thomas just popped this up here, and I'm just going to read this real quick. He talked about the fact that, we're talking about the trauma that Will spoke of, and I did is basically, but he's making a very strong point that there was also some trauma on Chris Rock's childhood. You got to imagine that he himself also struggled with some stuff that caused him to think, I got to apologize for, let's be real. He was just doing his job, right? Now, we could argue that one way or the other, but he didn't react the way I think, and Brother Joshua, he didn't react the way some brothers around the way might have reacted, or would have been a fight on the stage. So something in him even made him feel like, wow, I've been here before, and I've been smacked before, or I've dealt with this kind of, behavior. This isn't uncommon for me. And so he himself kind of went back into a shell or suppressed some of feelings that in that moment, and probably took him back to his own childhood as well.
Brother Fred, it's a liability for the Black man to be vulnerable. It's a liability, especially in our urban centers and in our when we're coming from lower socioeconomic places.
Yeah.
But I remember growing up, if you were to be vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable, physically vulnerable, it could cost you your life.
You
I was jumped multiple times as a kid. That's a normal story. Like walking to school, you could be murdered or killed. And when you're in a white neighborhood, police called on you, you could be murdered or killed. So there was no time in my life where I was never, as growing up, where I was never a target. Never. Right. Not in the city where I was from. Not in Baltimore City. It doesn't happen.
Right.
So how then do you emote? How do you learn to actually be able to share? We also men, so we also aren't programmed biologically to be as emotional.
Right.
So we're culturally and society condition us in a certain way towards being a thug, a brute, or being stoic. So you'll have the professional, the entrepreneur, the Black man who's made it, but he's stoic. He's machine-like. He's become like a white man. because if you look at it, this is an American culture thing when we get into masculinity when it comes to the stoicism, right? It really comes from some of the puritanical roots, right? Where it's just,
right.
I have no emotion. You remember back in the day, they had the action stars, Arnold, you know what I mean? Chuck Norris. These guys had no emotion. Shoot a whole bunch of people, smoke a cigar. It was nothing.
No feelings behind it.
None. Terminator, right? Machines. And so in our capitalist society, it's pushing that narrative. It's pushing this thing. So for Chris Rock or for Will at their level of success to actually tap into real emotion and be vulnerable to even share how you really feel. Maybe, I know Will wrote the apology, but maybe he don't really feel like, he did not feel like apologizing. We know he didn't because he didn't apologize in accepted speech.
Right.
He felt he was right.
And
maybe justified. That's the conversation that Will and Chris need to have. Man, you talked about my wife in 2017. They already had shot jokes at me. You ain't even the host today, and you're gonna shoot this joke at about a bald head while she been talking about that alopecia stuff. You know, like you was wrong for it. And then Chris, speaking the way Chris hasn't responded. They had a fake thing out there about what he said, but he hasn't responded. You know, except that he hasn't pressed charges.
Right.
On the stage, you have a response, but how is Chris really feeling?
Right.
He was a smaller man. I mean, I'll be honest, I've seen that happen where the guy doesn't respond.
Doesn't react.
And it's because the dude is like Will, he was bigger than him.
Right. Because you know what comes if you do. If I swing back, he gonna just hit me again.
I watched the dude get beat in the middle of the street. I'm talking about smacked, and the guy was smacking him and beating him with a belt.
Oh, trust me. I think if you live in any urban city, you've been a witness to somebody being pimp smacked around to prove a point
and never hit back because the guy he messed with, he had said something out of pocket. Same thing. And I think it's terrible, but we have to heal. We gotta find spaces to do that and do it where we aren't destroying our women in the process.
Yeah.
Because we saw him get smacked, but many times it's Jada who's getting smacked.
Right. Well, sisters like Jada. Right. So let me spin that side of it because I think that's a very powerful conversation to have as well. Right. From that woman's perspective, a two-phase conversation. Right. One is the expectation for the sister when you're in that relationship. How do you envision? And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna direct this one right to you, Charlene. How are you envisioning, expecting, desiring for that covering, right? Because that's ultimately what we're asking of that man, to be a covering over his queen, over his woman, over his lady. How do you see that, and what should that look like, right? And then the backside of that is, what does it take for us brothers to meet some of those expectations? Because I think sometimes we go into the table, like you said, with our own personal baggage, our childhood traumas, our own experiences, and then we walk into these relationships without having a clear understanding of what that woman needs or desires. We just come in and impose what we feel needs to be there without even sharing what we feel.
Oh, that's a good question, Mr. Ned. My expectation of being covered, right? It has to be logical. I don't want you to cover me based on emotion, especially if I'm not in physical danger. If my life is not in jeopardy or something like that, if it's someone bumped into me while they're walking, I'm not expecting you to go bust their head open, right? I need it to be a logical decision or response, not emotion driven. I don't respond to things like that, right? So I don't want my man to respond like that. I don't want to be, in a position where you could possibly go to jail. If we're in public, I don't want to feel embarrassed, right? Because that would embarrass me personally, especially if I'm not in any immediate danger, right? So for me, it number one, Mr. Ned, you can relate. Yeah, my covering has to be spiritual, right? You cover me spiritually. You pray for me. You do everything that the Lord instructs you to do. with me and your family. But and I want, and I've been saying this right the whole time, I just want to be able to be vulnerable. Yes, a conversation needs to happen between me and my boo so you know what to expect if we're ever in any kind of situation. Don't act a fool. You
Mm-hmm.
represent me. You represent your father. You represent your family, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
and you represent the African American community in some way, right? If I
Right,
have a
right,
son, I don't want my son to ever act like that. And I'm
right.
talking about, not just Will, but I don't want my son to have these emotional outbursts and then after the fact, right? Now I got to
Mm.
explain this to the world or to people or to my loved ones. I just don't want the covering to be anything outside of what's logical. You
Got
know,
it.
a normal response to a situation, just do that. You don't have to throw a spoon. And I'm just speaking from personal experience. You don't have to throw a spoon because someone messed up my order. You know,
Right.
Wait,
two,
hold up. Somebody threw a spoon.
I'm
yeah,
about to say we had a smooth ride. You went well. I was like, "What? Wait."
They threw the spoon like this, or they
Like,
threw the
hey,
spoon like that.
they took the
say,
spoon from
right?
the
What was the
and they,
Oh,
trajectory? Was
they
it
threw it like
forward or
that.
side on?
and two grown men can talk. They
Mm.
can talk. They
Amen.
can have a
Amen.
discussion. They can chop it up. It
Amen.
doesn't have to be in such an open,
Mm-hmm.
platform like that. They could have talked after the fact,
Yeah.
and we don't know what that was. We don't know what Jada was thinking. We don't know what Will was thinking. Yep, we recognize that there's some trauma there. I recognize that too, Mr. Ned. There's
Mm-hmm.
some trauma.
100.
It has to be
Yep.
for someone to react like that, and no one was in immediate danger. That emotional reaction, I cannot. It's like watching a chihuahua, a pit bull trapped in a chihuahua. It's cringeworthy.
Unnecessary, right?
Yes,
I hear you.
unnecessary.
I hear
So
you.
just cover me in a logical way. If I'm not in any danger, you know, if we could walk away and go home safely,
Mm.
we can. And we'll talk about that. But if my boo make a fool of me in public, I'm gonna let him cover me however he responds. But we gonna deal with that behind closed doors.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That holds a great deal of understanding from the male's perspective. Logic is something that we're pretty good at
Right. Right.
because we operate in those kind of silos. We do
Yeah.
stuff similar in a the and I'm doing this, and forgive me, and brother Josh, feel free to chime in whenever you like. I will throw this component to that table, right? That in the real world, right, there is still going to be an emotional moment for us. And I think what damages us most of all in most occasions is that in our younger years, there's not, which is different for women, there's
Mhm.
not any educational component to teach us how to manage, to express, or to show the emotions that we go through, right? Because we're human, we're flesh and blood, just like women are, but women are taught how to gauge their feelings. Men are not. And so when we're confronted with a moment, it's the logical thing in our head to just protect, to
Yeah.
just do, to just listen. I got to be the wall between my woman and the possibility
Yeah.
of danger. And so I agree with you. I think the logical component is there. For some guys, the logical thing is to be the stoic wall. And
And
if
for
I got to,
women.
right, and if I got to do what I got to do, then what comes out of that comes out of it. I'm not sure if that's not true. I know for a fact that the best way to deal with that is for brothers who are willing and have the knowledge base to, at least the wisdom to understand how to deal with their emotions, to be the beacon, the model for other younger brothers so that they don't come up and walk that dark path that we had to walk. At least turn on a light a little bit, put a night light in the walkway so that they don't have to bump their head as much. And that's always been my desire. And most folks who know me know I've never been a guy to blow up prematurely, right?
Mhm.
I've never been that guy. Have I had some blow up moments? Who hasn't, right? But I always, and this happened for me as I got to a point when I became a parent. It was important for me because I have two sons, right? And so with my boys, I need to make sure that they see not only how to handle themselves, but the consequences that come from how you handle yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you can always go off, but understand that when you do, here's the possible outcomes of you blacking out.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you decide to take the step that might be a little more logical or more rationale, then here are some possible ramifications of your actions. I think that understanding that, there's always a consequence. There's going to always be a consequence. The type of consequence you get is really determined upon how you react. Because what you can, even though you might not be able to control the moment, you can control you. And so that's the piece that I've always, gravitated to with trying to help young men, my sons and other young men who I've had a chance to touch, understanding how to move forward. Because at the end of the day, this is all you have to be controlled of, and if you give away your control by your inability to deal with a situation, then this wonderful world we live in, especially here in the Americas, they'll put you in a position where they try to control everything about you, when you go to bed, when you wake up, what you eat. You know what I mean? So we all know what that means. You now become no longer a person, but you become a number.
Right.
And so, those are the other pieces of the puzzle as well. And again, I think this went to what Brother Joshua was talking about when we talk about the expectation or the downward look that white stream America has on the African American male.
Yeah. And I understand that I'm not speaking for most Black women.
Oh, you are. You just
women. No. They want their man to fight every night to prove his love. Okay, I'm not speaking from that.
That was straight from Sister Phelps.
Right. I know I'm not, just from what I'm seeing on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my girlfriends and friends, that's what I want my man to do. I don't.
Sister Charlene, that's what I was actually going to ask you. How do you think Jada responded? Like, because I was thinking about this, right? And I'm like, man, this man might have cost himself some movies, another Oscar, like who knows what, I was like it seemed like at the time that people was like, have been, I don't know what's going to come out of it. But I was like, hold up though. He may have been saying, because they've been saying that their marriage has been on the rocks, right?
Right.
That's what's been reported. Who knows what's really going on, right? Like, for all we know, they trying to sell some books and come out with some, the hottest red top table. Because I'm watching it. You know what I'm saying? You watching it?
That's the next red table talk.
Look, they can pay-per-view that thing. I'm paying, right? I do restorative practice. They ain't got to pay me $500,000. I do it. But pay me $50. Look, pay me $500. I do it.
Right,
anyway,
I'm there, right?
But I'm asking. I was really interested in your perspective on that. How do you think Jada took it? Do you feel like, after that happened?
I think for Jada, she was very vulnerable with the world about a sensitive topic, her covering, right? Her crown. And
wow.
For women, if a piece of hair fall out, we crying, right? She's Jada Smith, right? So I think that, honestly, she was okay with that, because she was put in a position to be vulnerable before the world and embarrassed and humiliated, right?
Wow.
I've been there before. I've been embarrassed. I've been humiliated by people that were supposed to protect me. So I get it, right? But I honestly think that she was okay with it, and that's okay. That's okay. Maybe that's the nature of their communication. It kind of does seem like it doesn't matter what it seems like, in my opinion, but I think she may have been okay with it. She was vulnerable, and someone has to stand in the gap between that for her. And that's her boo, her man, who's been there with her through the shaving of the head. She probably cried a lot of tears because she's Jada Pinkett Smith, right? How was the world going to perceive me? How were the little girls going to look at me? And then you look at her daughter, who has a shaved head also, right? So not only is she fighting for herself, she's fighting for her daughter. Not only was Will fighting for Jada, but he was fighting for the daughter.
Wow.
Right? It's a lot of dynamic here, and it's a lot of ripple effect that people don't consider, don't care to consider, right? It's a lot within the Black community. It's just a lot. I think she was all right with it.
Right. Let me ask this question, because you said something, Charlene, that I thought was probably not really mentioned by most folks. A few people talked about it, but not many. And it's very important, particularly to our sisters. You talked about her crown.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And how important, or how important is the crown? Right?
Well, that's our strength. That's our strength, right? That kind of, defines the essence of our womanhood. Right? Whether our crown is straight, whether it's these hair locks, whether it's, red, it defines the nature of our femininity, of our womanhood, of our struggle, when people have their locks, right? And then after a decade or so, they cut them off to get rid of all of that, all of those years of negative energy. And that it means so much to our spirituality. If we are spiritual beings, it means so much. Our crown is important. It's important for women and it's important for men. And that thing got to be covered. It has to be covered, right?
Yeah,
and it has to be respected. Forget covered. You're going to respect this. You're going to respect what I got going on. And whether you understand it or not, this is who I am.
Right.
I had someone on a post. I don't know what the picture was, but someone someone very close to me disagreed with my hair, my locks. They said, "Oh no, it was a memory of when I had relaxed hair." Right? And the person said, "I used to love your hair like that." I said, "I know you did." They said, "Well, can you please comb that stuff out?" Who comb?
Wow.
It's our journey, right? It's our journey through life. This is my journey through the last 11 months of my life. Mr. Ned knows what I've been through in the last 3 years of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our crown is so important. Oh gosh. I wish we could talk more about the crown.
And so I asked that question for this purpose only. I mean, I think because as we talk about the protecting, right? I got to imagine that as you are very vivid in your description of your crown, your personal crown, I got to imagine that Jada must have had those moments too when she had to remove it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so to be in the presence of the guy who claims to be your love, your husband, your protector, your caretaker in a sense, and you're sharing like, this is devastating to have to remove this.
Right.
Had to be an emotional moment for him. And as we talked about, the emotional moment didn't speak to the Will Smith we see today. It probably spoke to the Will Smith of 9 years old and probably felt like I wasn't able to do protecting then. This I got to protect because my wife and my daughter have shaved heads. Their crown is so important to them. How do I protect that for them? So I think there's so many different, as we talk, so many different layers. I mean, we can peel this onion for days.
and he said it in his speech. Mm-hmm. He said he had been playing this character that protected his daughters, and that while he was playing that character, he had to protect these Black women. And we as a nation had just watched Ketanji Brown Jackson be attacked for 3 days straight for hours on hours on hours on hours.
Whew.
The Smith family has been under, if you think about the last 10 years, when have they come up in the biggest conversations? It's not been about the wonderful movies they made or the television shows or whatever. It's about, right? It's about the situation of with August and infidelity.
The entanglement.
It was that. And it was the last time they were at the Oscars.
Yeah.
And Chris clowned on them.
Yep.
And I know a lot of focus have been, on Will, and I know the brother brought up with Chris, and then what Chris is going through. But I also have thought about the responsibility of our comedians / clowns. Remember Tupac? And he says, I know when you come around the block, the brothers clown a lot. But baby girl, keep your head up. Like that's something in the community about clowning.
Yeah.
Well, our community is one of the very few communities that does the dozens. Now, they've appropriated the roast and all that kind of stuff to another level. But that's our culture.
That's what we've known.
But that's something also from slavery. I've heard some people say that there's an African connection. I haven't studied. I have to look into that myself. But y'all have heard about from Dick Gregory, like the whole idea where the dozens came from. The dozen of slaves that would be sold because they was inbred and all of that. And that's where the dozens came from, right? And so when the sister's talking about her crown and what that means and all that, and that Jada had to shave it off because everybody's experience ain't the same. And I think we gotta remember that, because some people be like, well, if it was me, if it was me, but it ain't you, it's her,
right?
And it's Will, and this is their experience and what they going through and
their journey,
and that's what Chris is going through and stuff. And he's been this clown who says things that can hurt people's feelings, right? And I feel like this straw was the one to break the camel's back. And if I'm straight up, like you said, we could be honest, like some people got to watch their mouth. And I feel like I'm not justifying what Will did, but I'm also saying some of our clowns, like there's a way to clown.
Absolutely.
To me, that was unnecessary to me. And maybe it's me looking at it behind, but I'm like, yo, she ain't up for an award. You already clowned her in 2017. It's a whole bunch of other celebrities around here. Why don't you clown one of these white women around here? Let me be straight up. Would you pull that same joke on one of them if they had something, if they had alopecia and they had their hair and they had their hair shaved? Let's get real about it.
Right.
No,
right.
You would not have. You calling them your friends, but is you really friends with Jada? Like for real? Because you was really friends with Jada. Did she really roll her eyes like that at you at the joke? Because at that moment, this is how I felt Will felt when I looked at it. Because that moment, I'll be honest, that smack, something about it is so, I'm like, yo, something here is off. I don't know if y'all feel that, but I'm like, something's off. But when I watched that, I'm like, yo, I looked at Jada, I'm like, everybody's laughing at her. Including Will.
Yep.
Chris is laughing at her, Will is laughing at her, the whole audience is laughing at her, and people have been laughing at her with the whole August thing, and people was laughing at her after Chris put the joke out in 2017, which really was, they were doing something, they were trying to do something to get black people on board. And even though he hosted the Oscars, to me, you ain't have to throw that joke out, because they were trying to do something here. And the reason why, one of the reasons why there were so many black people at this Oscars, I believe, is because of the actions of the black actresses and actors and directors back in 2017. Chris wasn't a part of that.
Correct.
He was a part of making that light. So, and as someone who has a movie about black hair, as somebody who has been a political voice, and our comedians are political voices within America. We see that with Dave Chappelle, like we don't see it with anybody else, but we have a history of it with our comedians. I just feel like there's a level of accountability, as Will should be held to a level of accountability for his actions. There's a level of accountability that's held for our actors to know. You don't get to just be a comedian and just say whatever you want to because it's funny and because you're on this stage and because you're not Louis, whatever else the other actors, the other white comedians are. You don't get to be them. Yeah. You're one of ours. We claim you. So we hold him to, I believe everybody across the board needs to be held to a standard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It goes to the comment I made earlier. Like there are consequences for everybody's actions. And I agree with you. I think that there's an accountability that needs to be held on both sides of the stick. You know what I mean? As we sit here and we ridicule, or we're talking about, and society is talking about how Will was completely out of pocket by walking up on the stage and smacking him. In the same vein, Chris knew, that he crossed the line back then at the Oscars years ago, and then the turnaround, and then, like you said, out of the multitude of people in the audience, you went right to Jada, and you weren't even you're not even the host, but you go, I'm gonna throw this jab right there, and whether we like it or not, some of us we don't take kindly to that, and so the actions that he came up.
Brother Fred, Sister Charlene, I'm in rush for Fred, but I want to know y'all. What could Will have done in that moment? I really thought about this. What could he have done in that moment after he's laughed, right? Now, that was on him for laughing, right? He should have known better. Will should have known that I don't need to laugh at this joke. I need to look at Jada the whole time, and if she laughed, right? But what could he have done, Sister Charlene? What could he have done, Brother Fred, after he laughed, so that his wife, the whole world is laughing at his wife right now? What do y'all think? Because I don't know.
Not go up there and smack the man. That's
you said I know one thing.
Anything but go smack him up.
Anything but smack him.
Listen, and like you, Brother Josh, I've had to bounce that question around in my head for the last couple of days as well. And realistically, for Ned, I would have probably had a conversation with him that might have gotten kind of ugly, but it would have been backstage,
in private,
right? It would have been. I don't even know if I would say it was private. We might have been heard out front,
but I wouldn't have saw it.
Right, but you wouldn't. You'd have been like, "Yo, what's that noise going on in the back? Why are they moving furniture back there?"
Right.
That might have been that kind of a moment, because I don't know how he might have reacted to the fact that I would have confronted him. But I don't know if I would have walked up on stage and did that moment. But like you, I wasn't offended by what he did either, right? It didn't bother me when he did it. I immediately was like, brother stepped up because he felt like, listen, and I jokingly said this to somebody, we don't know, for most of us who are living at a different, economic status, if you don't speak up in those moments, you're sleeping on the couch.
You said it to me.
For Will, that might have meant, dude, you got to go to the guest house tonight.
Right.
And so
you got to go to the east wing of the mansion.
Right. Yeah, you on the other side of the house, dude, tonight. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. Matter of fact, I don't want to see you till next week. Those kind of tension moments in relationships are devastating, And so, like I said, this, again, the person I said it to was a brother who has not been married, never been married. He just frequently dates. So he didn't quite grasp it. But I was like, dude, when you're in a marriage and your wife feels like you're not her covering, or she feels like you've come up short, or you haven't met her expectation for something that she thinks is essential for her,
man,
and you are way under the bar, and you have created an environment in your house that you can cut with a butter knife.
So here he is at the top of his career, but in his household,
listen,
he lowered in love.
Right.
And if not done right or done properly, because I'm pretty sure there's some repercussions at the house that he has to deal with as well. Because I'm pretty sure, even though she probably looked at him and thought, I don't know why he got up there and did that. A part of her was like, thank you, baby. But when they got home, she was like, well, you ain't have to smack him, though. You could have just went up there. You could have yelled for no. Like, I'm pretty sure those conversations went on in the house. But those conversations for a man are worth having, as opposed to the dialogue of, why didn't you do something?
Right.
Like, how do you not do something?
I thought he may have could have like kissed her on the head, like walked over to her, kissed her on the head, heard it, and said it screamed out, she's still fine. Like, right. I was thinking maybe that, but she might have been like, no, that's corny. Like,
yeah.
No, as a woman, she wouldn't have. No,
she wouldn't have. Okay,
that would have been like that would have.
I thought she would have got a limo. Like, that's corny. Like, you should have went there and smacked them.
As a woman, that would have validated my fineness to the world. I don't care what you think, Chris. My husband thinks that I'm beautiful.
Go. Right.
No, and my man said it publicly.
Right.
I got you.
Then everybody would have went from laughing to cheering.
It would have changed the atmosphere.
Yeah. It's so many ways that men can protect you. It's so many ways that men can protect women.
Right. It's just not always physical.
It's not always physical.
We got to learn that. Right? Uplifting you, validating you, giving you a sense of security through our words of affirmation sometimes can really make a difference. I got you, sis.
So the kiss. I was thinking about it when I
kiss on the forehead would have really.
I was like, yo, this corny.
He had a kiss on the head.
Love Jones,
Dude, that would have been it right there, though. She's struggling. And he walk over and kiss her on the head.
Walk her, kiss on the head, right?
Good
Screamed
move.
out, she's still fine, right? And Chris would have definitely co-signed on it too, because he don't want no smoke later, right?
You can't go against that one. You can't even come back with a joke after that one.
No, you better not before Black Twitter get on you.
No doubt. Listen,
and the that one act, I'm pretty sure if Jada feels unsafe at home in terms of my husband not really protecting me, that one slap is not going to erase all of those years of her feeling unsafe with her husband.
Wow.
It's not. They need therapy, right? They need healing. And one slap is not going to do it.
Wow.
Because now he's going to have to follow that up every time somebody disrespected her.
Right. He's going to have to up the game every time. Right. I hear that. Listen. I want you guys to know that I'm excited about this conversation. This has been great. I listen, again, we've been on for an hour and it feels like we just started because we're just peeling back and just pulled the covers off. But there's so much more that we could probably discover and expose from that one moment that we witnessed on the Oscars. So I just want to first say thank you to both of you for sharing, being vulnerable, putting it on the table today. It has been an awesome experience to share with you guys. Believe me when I say to you, know that the call is coming to you again to come back on and share, because I love both of the energy that you guys bring to the table, and what you share has been real and authentic. And that's what I love about what we do, to be able to be authentic in our delivery of the information that we put out to the population that we get a chance to touch. So I thank you. I want to thank every single person who has been watching with us today. You guys are so important to what we do and why we do it, and continue to support what we got going on. Again, we display what we do on a number of different social media streams. So if you didn't get a chance to see it with us live, know that you can always go see it on YouTube, on Twitter, on TikTok. We are all over the place with what we do, because we know that there are so many folks across the board that need to hear a solid message about how do we better ourselves. And that's what we talk about here in the Barbershop every other week. And if you don't catch me on the Barbershop, you can always get my sisters in the beauty shop on the off weeks. So there's always a way and a reason. So every week you can't miss us. We're always around here at Royalty Mission Network. So listen, I love you both. Know that you are always welcome here. Know that I am never, ever going to be the same as I was before we started, because I've grown and learned so much tonight. So I appreciate both of you and all that you're doing. God bless everybody. Have a great, great evening. And we'll talk to you guys soon here in the Barbershop. Take care.